Good afternoon. How are you today? I still feel joyous about yesterday's developments in the criminal prosecution of public enemy number one, now felon Trump. The weather report from Thomas Jefferson by me is 72 degrees out. There's no wind and there's plenty of sun, and there is not a cloud in the sky. There are little wisps of cloud. So we got the weather to go with the good news of yesterday. So what do we expect from Trump today? He probably gave us a gift. Now, he didn't intend it that way, but he trashed Cohen and the judiciary. He trashed Cohen without naming him, saying his name, but plainly identifying him, which is a specific violation of the court order. And this the day after he was convicted of 34 felony counts. Now, he's supposed to be sentenced on July the 11th, and some asked why so far away, and often it's 90 days or more. And I think the judge wants to move this along, and so he's actually, in my opinion, made it a little earlier. But that may not be the case. I don't know what he was thinking. He didn't say it on the record. Now, of the 34 counts, each has a possible maximum of 4 years. So no defendant, including Trump, would be considered to be exposed to 4 times 34. So that's not a possible sentence. There are sentencing guidelines, and the sentencing guidelines are not required, but reviewing them is necessary. And the theory being that the guidelines permit us to compare like defendants. And in that sense, the crimes that Trump is now convicted of are crimes that have been prosecuted in that office before. So there's a body of relevant statistics, supposedly, to see what is fair. And I understand that the range for a first-time offender in a nonviolent case is something like 1.5 years to 4 years. That would be the range, the 4 years being the maximum. Now, judges who make sentencing decisions usually can go beyond or outside the guidelines, but they usually have to make a statement on the record why. So I think technically the judge could go to the maximum by the guidelines, 4 years, and then add more time. Not 4 times 34, but 4 plus. And usually the way a judge handles a decision like that is, say the judge sentences 4 years for one count, and then sentences all the others for 4 years, but directs that the sentences will run concurrently, all at the same time. So that would mean on appeal, if you found that several of the counts were invalid for some reason, he'd still be exposed to that sentence. In other words, it wouldn't cure any possible defect because they ran concurrently. And there are other provisions that they would apply. I can't speak for the judge, and in a way, when I've been in a position and waited for sentence as a prosecutor, I was glad I wasn't responsible for the actual judgment, although in some few cases I had very strong feelings about what was appropriate. In this case, the thing that Trump has done that will bite him in the hindquarters is the violation of the gag order. And not just because he said something nasty, but because he's running down the system that he chose not to invoke, meaning he probably didn't do enough homework to prepare for the case, and he probably compromised his own defense by insisting on it, and then he didn't testify, and all these things might have made a difference, as difficult as it might be to prepare him to testify or for him to perform as required in a courtroom. In any case, the attacks on the judicial system, on Cohen, the morning after he was convicted, is something that won't sit well with the judge, and I expect that the prosecution will be bringing it up. So I say 4 years in prison, perhaps more. I can't say what the judge will do, but trying to be as impartial as one can be, given the charges and given the misconduct of the defendant, I think that's about right. Now, today is also a big news day in the Middle East. There has been no question that the situation in the Middle East has run off the rails in terms of outrageous conduct. Netanyahu sort of staking out a position to do whatever the hell he wants, and everybody else, allies included, be damned. Biden, I thought, was cowed somewhat by this approach, and sort of, it felt like a technical objection. And he is taking a beating in the polls for not being clear, and this only became worse after Israel, by Netanyahu, went into the area and killed 45 people and wounded another 65, and the people were subject to fire and explosion and damage, and one child was headless. There were lots of horrendous pictures, the kind of pictures that gets America usually saying, we have to do something to stop this. And so Biden has apparently, through emissaries, proposed on behalf of Israel, at least that's how it sounded, and we'll talk about that in a second, to have a kind of three-part program in which there would be a ceasefire while details were worked out, that Israel would withdraw, and there would be exchange of hostages for prisoners. And the contemplation would be that the cessation of hostilities would become permanent. And the trouble with all of this is, it's not clear to me that Netanyahu has surrendered his objections to our interference. So on the one hand, it feels a little bit like, I always quote Seneca on this, that the fates lead us to our destiny or drag us to it. And I feel that Biden has been dragged to this destiny. It's a good one. I prefer it. I'll take it at its face value that it's wholehearted until otherwise proven. But this is an important issue for me. It's an important issue for thousands of groups around the world. It's a problem for the international court. It's a problem that Netanyahu says this terrible attack was an accident, which is hard to believe. And Israeli troops are still there. Now, neither side is deserving, it seems to me, of much sympathy. Although for an extended time, Israel has had its knee on the neck of, well, Gaza really, even though they claim it's about Hamas, it's the attacks on men, women, and children, non-combatants, innocents, and with maximum hurt and destruction. So the question here is, how strong is the commitment by Israel? I don't believe we've heard from Netanyahu today. I think we've made it our business, but we're not acting upon it. And I'm upset that there were appearances by supporters of Ukraine, and we were no-show. I don't like the looks of that. So these could be election year adjustments, these could be conflicts in the schedule, these could be all sorts of things. But the groups affected by an absence, say, in Ukraine, were not having a wholehearted endorsement by Israel or matters of concern. So we can be sure in the next several days we'll find out where we sit on the spectrum of solid offers and only thin hopes. The sort of somewhat off the subject is the fact that Joe Manchin has declared himself an independent. And now, we've had other independents in the Senate. He has been a problem long before this announcement. And it is possible he could caucus with the Democrats if this runaround that is running as an independent allows him to get reelected. But that's obviously what his hope is. I expect we're going to have to continue to fight the Trump matter, and I have a couple of questions about that. One is, I think we should be asking why anybody is holding back the other prosecutions. As a public, we're entitled to know what the outcome would be before the election. And courts and personnel have got to stop the bullshit and make it possible, at the very least, for the D.C. trial to go forward. The Supreme Court is doing what it did back when it was Bush and Gore. They're playing fast and loose with the outcome of a presidential election, just as Comey did, with his on-again, off-again endorsements of investigations and clearing of investigations to the detriment of Hillary's campaign. We also should have as a solid question is, how can you, Trump, be president if you get a 4-year sentence? Don't give us any bullshit. You can't do it. And so why aren't you withdrawing now for another candidate to take the Republican mantle who does not suffer your encumbrance, if you will, your felonious ascription of misconduct in something relating to elections? And we're entitled to know, whether it be Georgia or D.C., whether or not a jury of your peers thinks that you're responsible for that. We're entitled to know whether or not you can handle secrets in the Georgia case, which is being mishandled by Judge Luce Cannon. So we have serious issues here, and Democrats should be making these issues public, should be stating them with the force of office, with the force of a campaign, in every possible state where we are embattled and the likelihood of a vote is close. We have to deal with that. So I think that's about all I got today. It's beautiful out. 72 is an ideal temperature, I think. So I say goodbye to you from my cathedral of trees, which I'm surrounded in dark and wonderful natural greenness. And you may have heard some animals making noises, even though one of those creatures' buses is coming at me right now. So all the best until tomorrow. Bye.